Welcome, Pewter Report readers and listeners, to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by our friends over at Celsius. I am John Ledyard, and I forgot to change my name again. So if you're watching this live, it shows up as my name is Pewter Report Podcast.
You're just taking over the podcast, John. It's all you.
I'm just trying to, apparently I'm trying to rename myself after the podcast. That's how dedicated I am to the show. Scott Reynolds, obviously, along with me here at Pewter Report on Twitter. Scott, we have some fun stuff to talk about today because we are going to dive into this Bucs 7-round mock draft. It did go up a while ago, but we are going to talk about some of the thought process behind some of those picks that you and I always kind of talk about ahead of time. And then we'll talk about my mock draft as well. And kind of how our thought process has happened with both of those mocks, and then compare some of the top running backs in the class as well. So it's going to be fun stuff on today's show.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's odd that we really first start talking about the draft in February, John, usually around these parts, around Tampa Bay. Sometimes it's even like mid-October, usually November, always December, certainly into January, right? I mean, usually this Buccaneer season ends right around January 1st, and we're shuffling off to the East-West Shrine Bowl in St. Petersburg, then heading off to Mobile and checking out the Senior Bowl. And we didn't do either one of those things this year. The East-West Shrine Bowl canceled because of COVID. You and I were busy, my friend. We really couldn't make it out of Tampa to go to the Senior Bowl this year because of the Buccaneers in the Super Bowl. So that was a welcome change. So it's better late than never. We're going to be diving into some draft talk. We've got the 7-round Bucs mock draft that went up a week ago today, and your mock went up yesterday. So if you're a fan of the draft, then why wouldn't you be? Jason Light has built this team through the draft and a couple of cool free agents sprinkled in, along with a couple trades, but primarily the draft, John. So it's very important, Buccaneer fans. You got the 32nd overall pick rather than the top 5 pick or the top 10 pick. So that's cool. Yep. But we're going to talk about that and more right after our good friends at Celsius let you know all about their cool drink. John, Celsius heat.
Love it. Got my orange. Got my orange with me.
Yeah, I had a grape yesterday. Had a grape yesterday. The Celsius heat. It's bigger, right? It's noticeably bigger. It's what you need for your workouts when you're looking to fuel your workout with the energy or to recover and replenish. Celsius powers active lives every day with essential functional energy. Now, we've had a lot of people DM us, email us. Well, how can you get Celsius? There's 2 ways. The best way, in my opinion, is to go to pewterreport.com, click on those Celsius banners. They're going to take you to Amazon where you can buy them in bulk and save a lot of money. Or if you're looking to just pick up a can in and around where you live, do so by going to Celsius.com, click on the store locator. They'll pull up every location right by your zip code, which is a really cool way to find Celsius locally.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're good stuff, man. I mean, I'm telling you, if you haven't tried them, it's crazy. I still get a couple DMs a week from fans trying them for the first time, or they're just trying a new flavor. And I love getting those DMs. So if you're out there and you are trying Celsius and checking Celsius out, definitely send us. And people have been tweeting at us too, and different brands and kinds that they've tried, flavors that they've tried. So it's been fun. We're big fans of Celsius for sure. Big fans of you all as well. We have a couple good comments here. Share My Year said, listen to a couple pods when running today. The Celsius track is banging to run to. I absolutely agree with that. I don't listen to it when I'm running, but it's just a great, I just love it. It gets me hyped. And the same person says, evening from the UK, these 4 p.m. starts means that I'm awake when you go live. That is pretty awesome. I know the 4 p.m. starts have been prefer for some people. Everybody's schedule is kind of on a little bit of a different page here. Devin says, John, I want to apologize for being in your Twitter mentioned so frequently. You do a great job. I appreciate that, Devin. It is crazy this time of year because it goes from not all but just Bucs fans, but a lot of Bucs fans most of the year to now it goes to every fan base. So it does get tougher for me to answer everybody, but y'all know I definitely try to interact with as much as I can. So definitely appreciate the questions and the comments, Devin. Keep them coming. We love that kind of stuff over at Pewter Report. So Scott, we've got some mock drafts that we want to talk about. We'll start with the Bucs 7-rounder. You've made some pretty sweet graphics for us, and just another example of the Pewter Report podcast taking the things to the next level a little bit. No big deal. But your 7-round mock draft that I also collaborated with you on had North Carolina running back Javonte Williams at the top of round 1. And at first, when you mentioned this to me, you said, what about Javonte Williams at 32? And I said, Scott, I don't know if they're going to take Javonte Williams that high, nor do I know if he'll go that high. And you were adamant. This guy is awesome. Talk a little bit about why you love him so much.
Well, let's rewind a little bit and set the stage for why the Buccaneers might draft a running back in the first round, because I think that's been kind of the biggest beef. I saw some comments about Najee Harris even in yours.
Yes.
We'll get to that a little bit later in the show. Here's why. Rule number 1, you don't pay running backs. You just don't, okay? Leonard Fournette, in my opinion, would I like to see playoff Lenny back in Tampa? I wouldn't mind it. But I don't think he's going to re-sign with the Buccaneers. I think he wants a bigger role. Remember, this guy was benched late in the season, and he wasn't really happy about it. Bruce Arians even came out in an article interview by Rick Stroud and said that, hey, if you don't like it, we can cut you. So you better deal with it. And then playoff Lenny emerged. But I think that he doesn't want to share time in the Bucs backfield with Ronald Jones, who, by the way, is going to be in a contract year next year. Okay, so why is that important? Well, Fournette wants to be the man and wants to have an opportunity, and I don't blame him. The Buccaneers, whether it was Peyton Barber and Ronald Jones the year before, or this year with Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette, they're a 2-back system. Okay, that's just the way they are. They need 2 running backs to split the load. As much as Ronald Jones was fawned over by Bruce Arians, he likes Ronald Jones. I don't think that he loves Ronald Jones. And we saw that when he had the opportunity to start Rojo in the Super Bowl and did.
Sure. Clearly, they think his limitations in the passing game are something that
no doubt about
their
it.
Offense. Yeah.
So looking at that, Fournette's going to be gone, in my opinion.
I agree.
LaShawn McCoy, we both agree, is going to be gone, right?
Yes.
I mean, he's okay. So now out of your 4 running backs, you're down to 2. You're down to Ronald Jones, who's in a contract year, and like you said, John, the Bucs aren't clearly sold on his pass catching ability, his pass protection.
Okay. And it can't be sold on Keyshawn Vaughn either. I mean, no matter what you thought of him coming out, last year was bad enough or concerning enough, not only with the lack of playing time, but also the drops and the fumbles, that you can't bet on him to be the other guy. It can't just be those 2.
Exactly. And let's not forget, Keyshawn Vaughn was a mid-3rd round pick, and Ronald Jones was an early 2nd round pick. So there is some talent discrepancy there just in where they were drafted. Now, let's look at Rojo, okay? Go back to when Doug Martin was given that big contract by Jason Light, okay? Jason Light is like an elephant. He's got a memory. And the conventional wisdom around the league is you draft running backs, you don't sign them to multi-year deals.
Right.
And you can look at a couple of guys, right? Todd Gurley out with the Rams. You can look at Christian McCaffrey, who just signed that big mega extension, played 3 games this past year. Saquon Barkley has barely rushed for over 1,000 yards in the last 2 seasons, got hurt early on this year. So it's a position that you draft. And I've been a big proponent of the Seattle Seahawks, always have a pretty good ground game. And they draft running backs over and over and over again. And that's why they're not going to pay Chris Carson. They're going to let him walk in free agency, which is what you should do. And that's why the Jacksonville Jaguars let Fournette go. That's why he was available on the cheap. So I'm not opposed to signing a free agent running back. We've all heard the name James White. Rex Burkhead's also available. Deion Lewis. There might be another Leonard Fournette caliber player that's young and wants a 1-year prove-it deal that the Bucs may end up signing as well. But the thing is at the number 32 pick, and John, we had Jason Light on the podcast a week ago, right after the Bucs won the Super Bowl. And he said, yeah, there might be a player we like at 32, or we might end up deciding to trade out of 32. Yeah. But the interesting thing about 32 and why this is important is if you're going to draft a running back and not sign one to pair with Rojo for a year and then take over when Rojo's gone, you have the 5th-year option. And I think that's exactly why Kansas City drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire, number 32 overall, because there's value with that 5th-year option as a running back. If you draft a young running back who's like Javonte Williams, who is going to be 21 on draft day, then you have him for 5 years. And at 26, you let him go. And you've already drafted his replacement in the coming years. So from a positional need standpoint, you want your first-round pick to see the field. Yes. We're under the belief that Shaq Barrett will be re-signed, that Ndamukong Suh will be re-signed. And if that's
Devontae
the case,
David, Chris Godwin,
David, exactly.
Rob
so if that's the case, where is that first-round pick going to see the field the most? Where are you going to get the most value in your defending the Super Bowl season? That's at running back. So that's why it makes sense. It's not to say that this team will draft a running back. They could draft a defensive tackle. They could draft an offensive lineman. They could draft an edge rusher. I wouldn't fault the Bucs for doing any of those things. It's just when John and I are looking at this, and you're picking at 32, and you might say, well, running back, that's not really first-round value. Folks, we're talking about the 32nd pick here. It practically is a second-round pick. Okay?
Right.
And the last thing about Williams that I'll just say, and we'll move on, is I got a feeling that Najee Harris and Travis Etienne are going to be gone. There's 3 teams that really need premier running backs, and that's the Miami Dolphins, that's the New York Jets, and that's the Buffalo Bills. They all 3
and the Pittsburgh Steelers.
And the Pittsburgh
24.
Steelers. Yeah. They want to get back to running the ball. So Harris and Etienne are enticing, exciting players. And I studied Javonte Williams a lot, watched a lot of North Carolina football. I think that this guy is I think Najee Harris is my favorite. You've probably seen my comments about Twitter. This is Najee Harris, and this is Javonte Williams, in my opinion. And I think both of those guys are going to be really good. I like Williams' tackle-breaking ability. He's got the speed-power combination, catch the ball pretty well, too.
At the end of the day, and here I'll go back and talk more about those guys and what you're saying, too, but at the end of the day, if you're 32 and Najee Harris and Javonte Williams are both on the board and you think you can trade back to 40, and grab a couple other picks.
Absolutely.
And Najee Harris will probably be gone, but Javonte Williams will probably be there.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think, again, we are talking about a position where the drop off from one guy to another is typically not that great. The Bucs did have one of the worst running back rooms in the league, I thought, throughout the regular season. Somebody commented on the drops, 17 drops. That's Pro Football Focus number. That's a ton of drops. That's the most drops Pro Football Focus is charted by a running back room. I think it's the second, or no, I think it's the most. Yeah, it was the most in the last 5 years. The 49ers, 3 years ago, had 16, I think, but the Bucs passed them up. And that's just in the regular season. There were more in the playoffs, obviously, but it's not just the drops. Pro Football Focus is being kind there in some ways. Yeah. There's also the inability for a lot of the season to create after the catch at a high level anyway. I think Fournette did make progress in that area, but neither of those guys were standouts throughout the season in that area. Yeah. There's also a lot of plays that won't go down as drops, that they don't run these little easy routes to the right depth. They don't adjust to the ball correctly. They're not expecting the ball. That was a big issue for Ronald Jones. As coaches have talked about this. We're going into year 4. You cannot expect those things to change or get better, and you cannot expect Keyshawn Vaughn to fix the problem after the way he looked last year. So you have to be able to address the position. Like you, Scott, we don't think they have to do it at 32. I know some Bucs fans love them doing it at 32. Some Bucs fans hate them doing it at 32. Yeah. It really depends who else is on the board, in my opinion. And that's why, not to totally switch gears off the 7 round, but I do want to go to my mock a little bit and look at some of the things that I did with this mock. I took Alabama running back Najee Harris at 32 for the Bucs. And I know we're both going running back right out of the gate with these mocks, but some of my reasoning here was that in this mock draft, a lot of the top edge rushers in the class were gone.
Yeah.
And I know you have them taking a guy who in Quincy Roche, who is in the second round, who could be there for the Bucs. There's another guy, Jalen Phillips, who is the other Miami edge rusher, who is a lot better and more talented than Roche, in my opinion. but there's significant off the field and injury concerns. He actually retired. He was at UCLA, he retired from concussions, 3 concussions, and then came back and played this past season in Miami. He basically is 1 season of college production. It was a great season. He looks like Daniel Jeremiah and I were just talking actually on Twitter, and he was saying, I think he's the best, the most talented edge rusher in this class. And I agreed with him. Based on the guys I've seen, and I've seen a little bit of Phillips during the season, the guy is different. So there's options, if you look at it that way with edge rusher. But again, a lot of these guys are either raw or have significant concerns off the field or character concerns or injury concerns. There's just no sure bet. And so it's tough to say this is the guy for the Bucs because they aren't really trying. They're trying not to take those risks lately in the draft with character and with injury concerns. They don't want another Justin Evans, Kendall Beckwith situation. Not that those guys had concerns coming out, but you don't want to lose guys. You spend a pick and lose a guy, his contract and his career because of an injury. It's just not a good investment. So there are those ancillary things to consider when you're thinking about other positions at 32.
And the other thing too is that let's keep in mind, again, this is as late as the Buccaneers have ever picked, right? I mean, the latest Jason Licht's picked is 19th, which was for O.J. Howard back in 2017. Mm-hmm. So this is a little bit of uncharted territory here for him as a general manager. And again, you got to remember, you're talking about the 32nd pick. It's the last pick in the first round. The next pick is the first pick in the second round. The next time you're on the clock, if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, unless there's a trade, is you have the final pick in the second round. That's almost like a third-round pick.
Right.
So if you look at where Ronald Jones was drafted, high in the second round, you can see that Jason Licht has some value for the running back position. He paid Doug Martin a king's ransom. Shouldn't have done it. That's one of his biggest regrets. Then he drafted Rojo in the second round. And John, what did we learn from Bruce Arians that who else was in the consideration for the second round pick last year? Not just
Antonio Gibson. And we know they loved Clyde Edwards-Helaire as well, if he would have been there.
Yeah. Running back from Memphis. And you're right. They loved Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
And that was in a year where they had a lot more needs than they do this year. I know they're always about best player available, but needs do matter. You want best player available at a position of need, and needs matter, and they don't have a lot in this year's draft. And we know running back was clearly a priority all last offseason. And if they get to the draft and Fournette isn't here and LaShawn McCoy isn't here and Rojo's going into contract year, we're going to know that running back is not a position they feel like they've adequately filled, even if they sign a James White or Rex Burkhead to a quick 2-year deal or something like that. Those guys aren't the running back of the future. Neither is Rojo, and so they need to find that guy.
They really do. And again, you saw how important the ground game is to Bruce Arians. Yes, he's the quarterback whisperer. Yes, he's got Tom Brady and all these weapons, and they are a pass-first offense. But, folks, 145 yards in the Super Bowl, right? And that's exclusively what they did in the second half. They ran to win. They had the lead, and Bruce Arians is old school. Once you have the lead, you run to win, and that's why it's important.
Yeah, no, and I think this too, Scott, the Bucs run scheme is not complex. It's not the 49ers where you can plug any dude in and he's going to run for 1,000. Raheem Mostert coming out of nowhere. You had Matt Breida, you had Tevin Coleman, you had all these dudes, Jerick McKinnon. They're all productive in that offense. That is not the Bucs run scheme. They really need somebody who can create, especially after contact. You are going to get contact in the Bucs scheme usually. It's a lot of duo. It's a lot of inside runs. There are hands on you. There are arms on you. Who can break tackles? Who can hit the holes decisively? Who can create after contact, even if it means falling forward? To be honest, that's a big reason why Ronald Jones still got looks later in the year because he was better as a pure inside runner than Fournette. He's a more physical, aggressive, explosive runner. And so that's really why they didn't switch fully to making Fournette a feature back in the playoffs is because of that. And so that's why it does matter. Now, again, I know I'm going to sound like a running back truther and people are going to clip parts of this podcast and come back at me, and I get it. But here's the thing, Scott. It does matter that the Bucs have a talented running back. I don't think they have to have Derrick Henry or one of the better running backs in the league to be successful, but I do think there has to be an improvement there. If they're not going to change the scheme, and they probably aren't going to change it dramatically, although I sure hope we get more polling linemen next season based on the success when they did it. But that's a story for another time. But I do think if they aren't going to do that, you need a running back who's going to create after contact, because this is a scheme in which you're going to get contact, and that matters. And that's why I really like Najee Harris, Scott. And Javonte Williams is great at that too. But here's the thing with Najee Harris, Scott, if we can jump into a little bit of player eval here. Najee Harris is an unbelievable receiver and a vicious inside runner. That's just not a combination you get all the time. And that's why I think he's ahead of where Derrick Henry was when Henry was coming out of college, because Henry, remember, it took him a couple years in the NFL, even as a running back. He still hasn't developed as a receiver, really. It's not really what he does. Harris is running routes. He's lining up in the slot. He's lining up outside. He's running verticals from the backfield. He's adjusting and making contested catches. He's making plays. He broke 20 tackles on 43 catches this past season for Pro Football Focus.
He's an absolute stud. And
he's a beast, dude.
Yeah, the reason why I have Javonte Williams in there is because I simply don't think that Najee Harris makes it to 32. I hope he does. I hope he's the pick. I'd be fine with that. But the thing with Williams is he was Pro Football Focus's highest graded running back ever in terms of their grade, like a 94.5 or something. And he actually had 15 more broken tackles than Najee Harris, who is a tackle-breaking machine. Yeah. So I don't think the Buccaneers could lose with either one of those guys. Now, I'm a defensive guy, John. You know that. And okay, let's go defense, shall we? Mm-hmm. Second round, Miami outside linebacker Quincy Roche. The interesting thing about Roche is he played one season at Miami. He's really a Temple guy. I think that's going to have a lot of appeal when you look at Bruce Arians, right? I mean, he drafted Chappelle Russell because he's a Temple guy. Don't think that kind of stuff matters, folks. It does. Sometimes there's not a whole bunch of logic in the war room.
Those unconscious biases, man.
Yes.
So they get in your head, right? Like you have a Temple connection. You like the guy a little bit. You like another guy too, but the Temple thing might put him over the top. That's kind of how it works.
If you remember last year, Jason Light and Bruce Arians made a pact with each other that on day 3 they were going to draft the Nebraska guy for Jason Light and his father, who was a big Cornhusker fan, as well as Bruce Arians and all of his Temple connections. And that's why they drafted Kilo Davis in the 6th round, and they drafted Chappelle in the 7th.
That reminds me of a story with Mike Zimmer. He was on the NFL Network broadcast talking to Mike Mayock in I want to say the 4th round maybe of day 3 of the draft. And Mike Zimmer and Moritz Boehringer, who was a wide receiver from Germany, I think if you remember, had some type of connection, or he went to his workout or something.
Right.
And Mayock was like, I think it'd be awesome if you drafted this kid. And Zimmer was like, well, we'll see what we can do. And then in the 6th round, they just draft him. I'm like, what in the world? You literally just did a TV spot and then just decided to use the pick on the guy. They really do throw some crazy stuff out there on day 3 that the process is less intense than you'd think.
You're right. Drafting Quincy Roche is not a crazy idea, right? He really reminds me a lot of Shaq Barrett when I turn the tape on. He doesn't overwhelm you with size. He's 6'3", 243. Keep in mind, Shaq Barrett, folks, I mean, he's under 6'2". Shaq Barrett is literally 6'1.5", 250 pounds. Okay, that's as big as Shaq is. So it's 6'3", 243 with a younger body and frame. I think that Quincy Roche in an NFL weight program gets to 250. He reminds me.
Good luck trying to figure out the Bucs prototype at edge, right, Scott? I mean, Anthony Nelson, Shaq Barrett in the same offseason.
And you got JPP out there who's 6'5" and he's like Gumby. He's a freakish guy at 270 pounds.
7 fingers, just trying to find guys with missing digits.
Here's what I like about Roche is he was asked to do something different at Miami, play a little bit more, almost like Shaq Barrett did, where he kind of sacrificed some numbers because he was lined up, a pretty good amount on the left side going up against tight ends and tackles. Most teams kind of right-handed in the run game. And the tackle production was still good. He had 45 tackles, 14.5 tackles for loss. That's a strong number. Only 4.5 sacks, but he's an impactful player. 3 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, and a pass breakup. John, back at Temple in 2019, he was the AAC Defensive Player of the Year. He had 49 tackles, 19 tackles for loss, 13 sacks, 5 pass breakups, 2 fumble recoveries, and a forced fumble. So this guy in his career, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 forced fumbles in his career and a handful of recoveries, and he gets to the quarterback. It'd be interesting to see what he times. And I think because of the lack of size and the lack of probably 40 time, I don't expect it to be great. I think he would be there at the end of the second round, which is that borderline third round pick.
Right. Yeah, I have some thoughts on him. I do want to recognize Architect out here dropping a $100 super chat,
Wow.
Scott. How about that? And he follows it up with a great comment. Appreciate this. He says, thank you guys for the sacrifice and consistency. So grateful for your dedication to us fans. Believe me, we wouldn't have it any other way. We love doing this kind of stuff. It's awesome, and definitely appreciate that super chat. That is hugely helpful. And if you guys are tuning in, by the way, for the first time, you can follow the Pewter Report podcast on Pewter by searching Pewter Report TV on YouTube and subscribing to the podcast for free and hitting that bell for when we get the notifications if you want, so you don't miss any time that we go live. I know some of you watch us on Twitter and Facebook. I think you can get notifications on there for when we go live as well, so you make sure you never miss a show. But we are 4 p.m. Eastern, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in the offseason, so it is going to be a fun time. Long Lost Glazer says Quincy Roche would be a good insurance for in case of Shaq or JPP getting injured. Speaking of insurance, my friends at Briar Greaves.
Well, there's no Briar Greaves read today, but I'm sure Briar appreciates Long Lost Leisure. We have you guys trained. This is awesome.
That's right.
This is very
That's
cool.
pretty funny. So let me just say this about Quincy Roche, Scott. I'm not like totally out on Quincy Roche, and I still have to watch a few more games of him for sure. But he is an interesting player to me because typically if you were a smaller edge, you really need to be athletic to be a productive player in the NFL. I think he's an okay athlete. I don't know if he's a great athlete. So it gives me a little
important for him.
Right. Testing will be important for him. Whatever testing looks like this year, I don't even know how accurate it'll all be, but it will be important for him. You're absolutely right about that because weight adjusted numbers really determine a lot for edge rushers. You know, if you look at any type of analysis over the years that's been done, it really matters, you know, especially 3-cone and 10-yard split and jumps. You know, that'll be areas where he needs to kind of move the needle a little bit. I'm not totally sold on him. Again, like you said, the production wasn't great this year. I think Jalen Phillips was a much better player on the other side. But as I mentioned a little bit earlier, there are concerns off the field from his time at UCLA, especially. Yes. And I don't like getting in a ton of details about stuff that are just other than to say that. I know fans always want details. I never know. I think the source is legit. Otherwise, I wouldn't say anything that the source that I've heard from on it. I know he's legit, but I don't, you know, again, things could have changed for Jalen Phillips instead. So I want to leave the door open for him to be able to grow and change too. So hopefully that's happened. And he's a super talented player. I would even say he might be a top 10 talent in the class.
Oh, yeah.
At some point, somebody's going to want to swing at him. And I wonder if, I don't know if it happens in the second round. I don't know if it happens in day 3. I don't know what's going to happen.
An interesting guy, too, that I've been studying is Washington's Joe Tryon. He didn't play last year, but he's a really interesting edge guy, 6'5". He's got longer arms, bigger size, really good motor. I don't think he's as skilled or has the rush plan that Quincy Roche is.
He's like a power forward guy.
Yeah, he kind of
long arms people.
Yeah, and he's very twitchy, and he's a big motor guy. We'll see. He might appear in the next mock, but I just like the fact that Roche is tough against the run. He can get to the quarterback. He gets the ball out too. He's got great pass rushing awareness. He rushes with the plan. And he's a tough-nosed kid from Baltimore who went to Temple. So there's a lot to like there that are in the Buccaneers, scheme. Let's go back to the mock. Wisconsin Whitewater.
Now we're talking.
Miners. Now, the interesting thing is I've not watched anything but a highlight tape and some Senior Bowl highlights because Quinn Miners didn't even play last year because Division III football was not existing because of COVID.
Right.
But this guy,
talk about a tough eval, Scott. I mean, guy has no tape from this past season. He's a D3 player.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw the Senior Bowl, though. There was no question, man. He absolutely destroyed people.
He's got 4 things that Jason Light likes in offensive linemen. Number 1, he went to the Senior Bowl, okay? Because you look at Donovan Smith, Ali Marpet, Alex Kappa, all those guys are Senior Bowl guys. Number 2, he's a small school guy, right?
Ryan, and he has the small school mentality, right?
He does, yeah. That ever-present chip, and it's a big one on his shoulder. You look at Alex Kappa from Humboldt State. You look at Ali Marpet from Hobart College. You look at Ryan Jensen, who went to Colorado Pueblo.
Yeah. CSU Pueblo.
Yeah. So there's there's some traits there. Number 3.
Stinney too. Where'd Stinney go? Stinney was like somewhere small, right?
I can't remember. Yeah, he might have been
one of the correctional Tennessee or something like that.
Yes, I think you're right there. Number 3, he's just tough as nails. This is a tough guy. Okay, he's a barroom brawler. You put on his tape, and it's in the Pewter Report 7-round mock. So if you want to see a highlight videos in these guys, you can follow along and do that. But the toughness is there. This guy's a barroom brawler. He's the doorman at the bar. He'll throw you out of the bar. And number 4, he's got long. Right, I mean, Alex Kappa, Ryan Jensen, Ali Marpet, long hair. I'm telling you, it's a trait, John.
That is true. He likes O-line with a little bit of character and a little bit of flair, and like that is what these guys have. And by the way, Miner's one of his heroes and one of the guys he really studies, and we've seen this from his Twitter even, is Ryan Jensen. He loves his mentality and his playing style. So I know the small school thing will have everybody putting Miners to the Bucs, but I really think there's a decent chance it happens, Scott. Not just because he's a small school guy, but because he also is. I know everybody tried to put Ben Barch with the Bucs, and maybe Ben Barch is a tough guy and all that, but I don't know. But I know Miners is, and I know actually one of the guys that coached Miners in college is one of my good friends, Owen Reese, on Twitter. He and I go way back, and he is just raves about Miners. Just an awesome kid to coach. All the teammates love him. Sets the tone, but doesn't take himself too seriously. Great locker room guy. He just can't say enough good things about him.
And John, it's not about drafting for this year. You got to remember, right? Ryan Jensen is going to be 30 years old in June. I'm a big Ryan Jensen fan. I think he's played exceptional football the last 2 years. Each year in Tampa is better than the last. But he's going to be 30 this year. He's making $10 million. This is the final year of his contract. And I think that the Buccaneers would like to have a plan there, a succession plan.
Yeah, for sure. And you have to think about this too. Miners played guard and center. He's that versatility. Practice played at both spots and played at the Senior Bowl. Both spots looked really good. Seemed like he could play either. So really good sign for them because, again, even if it's just this year, you need depth at both those spots. So draft them this year and then you evaluate where things are at with Jensen. And obviously Kappa will be in a contract year. So Kappa could be a guy that, I mean, probably he and guys like Ian Whitehead are guys that probably move on after this next season, and you can't re-sign everybody. And so got to be able to fill in those spots again. And I love that pick. I love it. I hope he's there in the 3rd round. I think it's perfect if it happens.
And the thing too, John, is as I've had both Mike Greenberg and Jason Light say this to me in years past. You know, it's tough to have when you're trying to fit the salary cap puzzle together. It's tough to have 3 linemen making over $10 million on the same line, and that's what you have with Donovan Smith and Ali Marpet and Ryan Jensen. So, okay, we've heard some complaints now. It's a little offensive draft. What am I thinking? I'm a defensive-minded guy. Okay, fine. Here's your defense. Kairos Tonga, BYU.
By the way, before you break down Tonga, can I just jump in and say if anybody's wondering why round 4 is the first time a defensive tackle is being mentioned, this won't be the case in all our mocks. Right. This is a tough defensive tackle class. I mean, I've seen a couple draft evaluators that are deeper into it than we are, and they've said it's like that's like the weakest position in the whole class. So
there's
tough one.
Literally like a handful of guys. I wouldn't be surprised, John, if when push comes to shove, that the Bucs draft board might have literally a handful of draftable defensive tackles. You know, and the thing is you know the draft is over 200 players deep. The Buccaneers and most teams, they will only have less than 100 players with draft.
Belichick would have like 30, 40 guys in the whole draft.
In the entire draft, that have draftable grades that fit the Patriot way. In this case, fit the Buccaneer way, right? That haven't been crossed out due to character concerns, injuries. I mean, there's players that people, the mainstream guys, the McShays, I almost said Mayock, the Daniel Jeremiahs of the world, these draft people that you see on the networks, they'll have these guys like in their day 2, day 3 lists, but there'll be NFL teams that will literally have them with non-draftable grades. Even guys that will have mocked in the middle rounds. It's because of medicals, and the medical information is really hard to get a hold of, right? Because that's where the confidentiality comes into play. But the thing about,
for sure.
The thing about Tonga, John, and the reason why we kind of penciled him in there is, you look at Jason Light's defensive tackles that he's drafted, and it's kind of interesting, right? Because we looked at this. Vita Vea is a monster. It's the highest he's ever drafted defensive lineman. just outside the top 10, 350 pounds on draft day. He's probably around 340 right now. The other defensive tackle he drafted was Stevie Tuikulabatu several years ago in the 7th round, and he was a 330-pound guy. It's kind of a short, squatty nose tackle type from USC. Stevie Tuikulabatu didn't make the team. Obviously, Vita Vea is a big contributor. The other defensive tackles he drafted, Terry Beckner Jr., who was under 300 pounds, and Khalil Davis last year, who was right around 300 pounds. So he's drafted some really big, beefy nose tackle types and some more of that kind of classic 300-pound, three technique guys. But we went ahead and put in Tonga because, I don't think Steve McClendon comes back. Does Nacho come back? Raheem Nunez-Roches on a 1-year deal. He's getting to be a little pricey the longer he plays. Even at the veteran minimum, he's still pricey. And without Vita Vea in there, we saw what happened with the lack of pass rush. Tonga's not the kind of pass rusher that Vea is in terms of being a sack producer. He had 3.5 sacks last year, and then before that, he had 5 sacks over his first 3 years. But he will push the pocket. He will get some tackles for loss. He's kind of a poor man's Vita Vea, and I think that's pretty decent value in the 4th round, and it gives the Bucs that bigger type of body in the middle that they don't have right now. It's pretty much Vita Vea and nobody else,
right,
of that size.
Yeah, and that's the range in the draft you want to do it in. I see Long Lost Glazer saying, what about Tyler Shelvin as a backup nose tackle at pick 64? I don't think Tyler Shelvin's a bad player or anything. I think he's a good player, but you don't want to take a backup nose tackle at pick 64. You want to get a little more value out of that. We talked yesterday, by the way, if you're not on Locker Room, we have some good shows on Locker Room. We talked on there on the app yesterday about the defense, the nose tackle position a little bit and what the Bucs could do. And a guy that's intriguing in free agency, I'll just throw a name out there, is Mike Pennell. The Chiefs, actually, he was with the Chiefs last year, just plays a lot of rundowns. He's a good backup nose tackle. He's older now. I think he's on the other side of 30, but he's been a good run stuffer his whole career. Nothing in the pass game, but he's probably going to be dirt cheap, and he's probably going to be looking to win a ring. That's why he's on the Chiefs, and he fits. He's a good run stuffer, a good guy to play and have, similar to what they asked McClendon to do this year. For cheap, I think that he's a guy that they could definitely get. But I mentioned those conversations on Locker Room and wanted to make sure you're aware of what Locker Room is. Locker Room is changing the way we talk sports. It's the only place for live audio conversations about the takes, rumors, news, and teams you care about. React to sports news as it happens. Gather all your friends and watch parties for the biggest games. Rep your favorite teams and find your community. Better Sports Talk is just a tap away. Download on the Apple App Store and join the conversation. Locker Room is the app. We have a lot of fun on there. In fact, we had a listener just jump into his first one. Anthony Papp, faithful listener of the podcast, just jumped in his first Locker Room chat yesterday. We had a good group discussion going. Lots of people sounding off. Ren's always in there. I hope that doesn't scare people away. Ren is always in there. I hate to discourage people from downloading the app, but yeah, definitely get the Locker Room app and jump into those conversations. When we go live, you'll send an invite out to you actually, so you'll be able to get those. And you'll know when we go live. The times do kind of vary, but we always have one on Tuesday because the Locker Room is also the proud sponsors of Bucs Briefing, my weekly column. So pumped to be partnered with them and good conversations happening there. And here as well, Scott, as we move through this mock draft a little bit, I do think you did a good job of balancing out kind of the offense and defense, but then you go back to tackle in round 5. Again, they need like a third option at offensive tackle. It didn't really work out with Joe Haig. I think he's free agent, isn't he? I think it was just a 1-year deal, wasn't it?
Yes, it was a 1-year deal.
So, and
he's
gone.
The thing with Deontay Smith from East Carolina is this is a guy that played at 275 pounds left tackle. Okay. Really interesting. Really interesting.
Lean.
Guy. He's very lean, but he kind of reminds me of a shorter DeMar Dotson. DeMar Dotson was barely over 300 pounds. When he showed up to Tampa, he was a basketball player. He came into camp at 265. Not just 265, John. He was 6'9". So imagine how lean and skinny DeMar Dotson was. And he added weight. And as word has it right now, I believe he was at 291 for the Senior Bowl. Okay. And Deontay Smith didn't. He played in one game last year. It was the UCF season opener. And then that's it.
Yeah.
Sorry, John. You already Removed from the Pewties.
Removed from the Pewties. You hate to see it.
Yeah, you hate to see it. But the thing with Deontay Smith is he really dominated in practice. He the footwork. He's a technician. He's got very long arms. He's got everything you want except for the girth right now. And I think that's coming. I think he'll end up being around 300, 305 pounds in the NFL. But he's a project. This guy cannot play at that weight right now. And so he's a perfect mix. Now, the problem is he has the footwork. He has the traits. Yeah. And I don't think he's going to last. I'm starting to hear a lot of buzz about him right now.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be there in the 5th round.
I was going to say that, actually. It's funny you mentioned that. I wondered, we only saw him a little bit at the Senior Bowl, and I haven't seen any of his tape, so maybe he's terrible on tape, but that even probably wouldn't preclude him. I mean, just because he's long and athletic and he looks the part. Right. I mean, how many years we've seen these guys go high every single year? I mean,
I think back the Alabama State kid to Houston. What was his name?
Which kid?
The Alabama State kid.
Oh, yeah.
A couple years ago.
The first round, Titus Howard.
Titus Howard, yeah.
And then there was
no business being a 1st round pick.
No.
But he blew up at the Senior Bowl. He showed up well against Montez Sweat.
Yeah. And even if you don't look that good at the Senior Bowl, Brandon Parker, he was the first pick in the 3rd round by the Raiders. I mean, Brandon Parker's own family did not think he was going until late on day 3. I know. I talked to him before. They just didn't. They couldn't believe it. And so, it's just like those kind of guys. I mean, Raven Clark, horrible tape. And
horrible.
Yeah, he was just bad. I mean, I had a 7th round grade on him. He went what?
Texas Tech lineman.
Right. Yeah. Don't do it. Yeah. We saw that with Terrence Steele last year in Dallas too. But it is one of those things where guys like that always end up going higher. I think that's going to probably happen with Devontae Smith Dante Smith. We'll see how that progresses. I got to go look at his tape too. I haven't really seen it, but would be a very interesting pick for the Bucs at that point in time. The next pick was the round 7 pick, Scott. And that was a little bit of my influence on this pick. I was kind of pounding the table a little bit for Trevon Grimes from Florida. Now, I know Grimes, I think there's a chance, even though his production is really limited, and right now most of the boards I see out there have him more in this round 5 to 7 range. 7 might be a little bit late for him here. Maybe he ends up being the round 5 guy eventually. We'll see. It's early in the process. We want to see how things play out, and he hasn't been super productive. But he ran a 4.4 coming out of high school. And he's 6'4", 205 pounds. He looks great on the hoof. He makes a ton of tough, combative catches. I don't know that he's a great separator or route runner or technician right now, but he's got lots of tools, lots of traits. He is very much the Bucs prototype in terms of size, speed being the priorities that they look at. Got that ability to win contested catches. Not a lot of production, but when he went up and got the ball this past season, it was pretty fun to watch. He was the forgotten guy with Kadarius Toney and Kyle Pitts there, but he made a lot of plays.
He was that third fiddle in that Kyle Trask Florida offense, and had his most productive season this year, 38 catches, 589 yards with the 15.5 yard average, 9 touchdowns.
Right.
But that just shows you how much he was the third fiddle. Now, he did have, I think he mossed Patrick Surtain in the Alabama game and went up and got a pass. And the thing is you mentioned the traits, and you look, day 3, the Buccaneers, Jason Light cannot help himself drafting wide receivers, right? Whether it's Justin Watson.
They love it. They'll draft one this year, I guarantee.
Sure. Scotty Miller was a day 3, wide receiver.
Tyler Johnson.
Tyler Johnson, exactly. So
wasn't Kenny Bell? Was Kenny Bell Jason Light pick?
Kenny Bell was a day 3 draft pick. And you can even go back to Robert Herron in Jason Light's first draft back in 2014. He drafted Mike Evans with the first pick, and the 7th round pick, Wyoming wide receiver Robert Herron. So
I remember Robert. Yeah,
he loves those wide receivers on day 3. Now it seems like the Buccaneers have a glut of wide receivers, especially just drafting those 2 guys, as we mentioned, Tyler Johnson last year, Scotty Miller the year before. I think Justin Watson is in a very precarious position, and I don't think Antonio Brown is an automatic slam dunk that he's coming back. So.
And if Godwin comes back, it's probably on the tag. And if he has a great year, he might be the highest priced receiver in the league after the season. So you have to prepare to not be able to pay him what he wants. And at that point in time, you're probably looking at the possibility of somebody else stepping into that role if Tyler Johnson isn't ready, or, you have Tyler Johnson, Scotty Miller, Mike Evans, but you'd want somebody else, hopefully proven. So I think wide receivers on the board for the Bucs kind of across the board, even though they have plenty of guys for 2021. beyond that, it's a position they always want to be ready at. That's why they drafted Tyler Johnson. You always want to be ready at that
why
position.
they signed Antonio Brown, because they had a chance to make the playoffs. And Jameis Winston's last year, Bruce Arians' first season, 2019. And Scotty Miller, Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans were all on injured reserve after the Lions game. So that's a position this team was scarred by. They never want to be in. That's why they drafted Tyler Johnson this year. That's why they signed Antonio Brown. So keep that in mind. Again, it's not just about 2021. It's looking towards the future. And that's why we're talking about running backs and wide receivers, even though it doesn't seem like a pressing need. Jack Barrett says, thoughts on the lack of production of these smaller, faster receivers, Ruggs, Rager, in recent years compared to the larger prototypes, Metcalf, Johnson, A.J. Brown?
I'd have to really sit and look. I mean, those are good examples, obviously, but then it's also, it's a small sample size. And when you say recent years, those are just a couple guys. I'd have to really sit and look. I mean, I know Terry McLaurin's not the biggest receiver, and he's lighting it up too. So I think a lot of it does depend just on your skill set, big or small. There are certain ways to win in the NFL, and some of those guys didn't have. Rager, I thought he was overrated the whole time. I think he's still has upside, and I'm not writing him off by any stretch of the imagination. But to me, the height there wasn't really warranted where he was ended up being taken. And then Henry Ruggs, I'd like to see them use him a little more and a little better. Sure. I think.
And he had to get more production.
And he wasn't healthy too. So there's a lot to consider there. But really want to wrap this up as we wrap up the show with TCU linebacker Garrett Wallow. This guy looks like he was created to fight on special teams. Just a physical, tough. I think he's undersized, right? Isn't he? He's
about 6'2". They list him at 230, but I bet you he's probably around the 220 mark. But he played safety at TCU. He kind of went back and forth between safety and linebacker. So he does have the ability to drop in coverage. He wasn't a huge guy in pass defense, but I think he's good enough. He had an interception in 2019. He's had 4 pass breakups dropping into coverage. But what I like about him and where he's a really good fit, aside from being a tackle machine, he had 125 tackles, 18 tackles for loss in 2019. Last year, 90 tackles, 9 tackles for loss. But John, this guy can get after the quarterback. And as we all know, Todd Bowles likes to blitz linebacker. He had 2 sacks last year, 3.5 the season before, 3 before that. Add them all up, you're looking at 8.5 career sacks for the linebacker position. And this guy is just a hard-hitting ball of energy. Like you said, would be an ideal special teamer, kind of the kamikaze running down there on kicks and punts. And I think that's where his bread would be buttered. But Jack Sitchie is just Mr. Glass. I like Jack personally, but the guy cannot stay healthy.
Yeah.
And when you look at Kevin Minter, is Minter going to be back at age 30? On a 1-year deal, they had to sign Deion Buchanan. Jamal Russell didn't work out. So right now, I mean, Levante David technically is going to be a free agent. I think he returns. You've got Devin White in there, but you're going to need some more depth at the inside linebacker position.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So it'll be interesting to see how that position gets addressed because you've got Kevin Minter, like you said, Levante David, and then you've got very little, youth that they're excited about at the position. Certainly they could stay healthy. And so there are a lot of things to still figure out there. Jack Barrett wants to know what assumptions were made making this draft. We did mention at the beginning of the podcast, we are talking about a situation in this mock draft and in probably all mock drafts until we know something otherwise, that Jack Barrett, Levante David, Chris Godwin, and Ndamukong Suh and Rob Gronkowski are back. Don't really know about Antonio Brown yet. Don't know if it would change draft strategy too much.
I don't see Jason drafting a kicker.
That's right. So we're assuming those guys are back and then not sure about Antonio Brown and thinking Leonard Fournette won't be back. So that's kind of the thought process behind it. I just think somebody's going to throw some money at Leonard Fournette that the Bucs won't want to match and definitely won't want to match in a year like this where there's lots of other considerations to be made with the cap. Remember, Carlton Davis next year. If you really think he's a top 10 corner in the league, you want to pay a guy like that. That position is really valuable. I mean, I ventured so far to say, I think Scott went out. You were asking me who I thought was the most valuable defensive player. I love Levante David and Jack Barrett, and I think Devin White had moments, but what a number one corner can give you and his ability to match up and make life easier for other guys, that really went overlooked for a lot of games this year, and it got overshadowed because Tyreek Hill lit up Carlton Davis, obviously. But the rest of the season, I mean, if they didn't have that guy, with the way Sean Murphy-Bunting and Jamel Dean, if you're just talking about pure value, I just think he's a really important player. So, again, you have to consider all those things when you're thinking about who to re-sign.
John, when I looked at your NFC South draft, right, and the great thing is in your first mock draft, which blew up on pewterreport.com yesterday, you have picks for all of the first rounds. But of course, having the tunnel vision on the Buccaneers that I do, I looked at the NFC South. So we're going to really talk about these guys. Obviously, you've got Trevor Lawrence going first overall. And who was your second overall pick? You've got
Zach Wilson going second, the BYU kid who I watched today, by the way, and buddy, he is good.
Yeah. All right. So, and really what that does is that starts an early run on quarterbacks here because you have a trade. You've got the Carolina Panthers, right, who are trying desperately to upgrade over Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater right now has got to probably be wanting out of Carolina, not feeling any love from all the rumors and reports out of Carolina saying, you're not good enough, Teddy. We want somebody else. But you give them Justin Fields. So that's a big trade to move up there. And what do you think that the Panthers have to give up to trade up the 3 spot?
My guess would be that I'd have to look at the points, but I would guess they'd have to give up something like, that's a pretty decent jump. They'd have to give up a couple picks probably. I don't even know how many picks that they have. I mean, they know they can do it, but they'd have to give up a couple picks probably to move up there from 8 to 3. It's a pretty decent jump. I mean, Fields is a really good player. It may not even get to the point they need Fields. I mean, they're going to be pretty aggressive with Deshaun Watson, I think, and I mean, they already put in an offer Matt Stafford. Like they're really trying to upgrade that position. And so,
the interesting thing is Miami's sitting at number 3, right? They just drafted a quarterback, right? And Tua Tagovailoa. So, you got to think they're going to be looking to field offers. And what I liked about your scenario here is you've got the Panthers leapfrogging the Atlanta Falcons at number 4, right? To get Justin Fields.
Yes. Oh, Dragonload, by the way, yes, to get the locker room app, you just go to the App Store, download the locker room app, and search for Pewter Report. I see you asking that question there. And once you follow Pewter Report, you'll be good to go. Yeah, it is interesting, Scott, because I don't know what Atlanta's thinking. I just can't. I mean, they're in the top 5. How many years is that going to happen in Atlanta? The last time it happened, they took Matt Ryan at number 3 overall. I just don't think it's a situation they plan to be in very often. The roster's good. I mean, you know what I mean? Like Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, they have enough players where they're going to be competitive again next year, probably, especially given how they played over the second half. I think they just needed a change, and they needed coaching change. I think that they're going to be a better team next year, a more competitive team. How often are you going to pick that high? And you're eventually going to want to have a replacement for Matt Ryan. I think you could trade down, but it really is it's a good quarterback class. Trey Lance is very talented. I mean, as a runner, as a passer, he might need a little bit of time and it might need to iron out the kinks, but guess what? You got Matt Ryan next year. It's kind of like the perfect situation for him, I think, to step into. And if you're Atlanta, I think you have to take that chance. It's such an important position. If you could go from Matt Ryan to another guy and you're in the top 5 right now, you don't have to trade anything else to get there. I think you have to take that chance. This is a good quarterback class. I would take advantage of it.
Do we know that Trey Lance would be a good fit in Arthur Smith's offense? Is he a better fit, I should say, than Matt Ryan, like for the long term?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think Matt Ryan's a great fit. I just don't know how much cap hit and things like that, and how how they're going to view things with it. Maybe they do think it just doesn't sound like they think. I think they're excited to work with him right now, but it really sounds like they're trying to keep options open. And he is getting older, and I mean, I don't think he's quite the same player. I don't know if he's fallen off dramatically, but they also know it's going to come to a point where once his contract is tradable, there probably is going to be a market for him, So if you could get him and then assets, and then you get a quarterback on a young contract that's playing well too, I don't see any reason why Lance wouldn't be a fit in Arthur Smith's offense. The one thing that Arthur Smith will probably have to add in is Lance's legs. I mean, he can legitimately run the ball for you. And so I would imagine there'll be some tweaks to be able to do that too. Again, we're getting far down the rabbit trail there, but
and at the same time, Ryan Tannehill was not he didn't have cement boots on in the pocket. He could get outside the pocket and do some things. He wasn't a scrambler. He wasn't the guy doing design quarterback runs necessarily, but certainly had some mobility more than Matt Ryan. So I do see some slight parallels there between what Tannehill can do and what Trey Lance can project to.
Yeah, it's a really rare quarterback class, Scott, in that all 4 top guys are really good athletes. All 4 of them can make plays out of structure. All 4 of them have really good arms and have showed that.
It's the future of the NFL, right?
They really are. All 4 of them really,
Jackson.
Yeah. Even Joe Burrow last year, as much as I love Joe Burrow and I thought he's a great prospect, there wasn't this elite arm. That was probably his only negative, really. I think it was a good enough arm, and I'm fine with it. I'm not knocking him. I just think this year's class is really 4 guys that just fit the prototype. Now, there's kinks that need to be ironed out with all of them, but all of them are really talented. They put some good tape out there for sure.
So the problem if you're the New Orleans Saints is you made the playoffs, you're NFC South champions, you get the T-shirts, but
yeah, the cap situation's bad, and the secondary is where they're going to lose people. PJ Williams and Marcus Williams are both free agents. Marcus Williams is going to command top dollar. I don't think they can bring him back. My guess is PJ Williams will get re-signed cheaper, and they'll mess with his contract or whatever. They'll make him the free safety. Malcolm Jenkins is still around. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is still around as the slot guy. Sante Samuel, I know he's a smaller guy, but he played outside at Florida State, pressed, good tackler than his dad was. I really think there is a lot of talent with him. He can mirror match a lot of man coverage. The Saints play a lot of man coverage. They need somebody opposite. George Jenkins is older. Patrick Robinson's older. Neither of those guys are the long-term answers. Both of those guys could be cut to save money. He probably will be. And so they need somebody opposite Marshawn Lattimore for cheap. This defense thrives with a lot of DBs. They prioritize the position. They need corners to survive. They probably can't afford to sign anybody expensive, so draft someone, and I think Samuel's a good one.
With Tom Brady, Matt Ryan, and that whoever is under center in Carolina, they're going to throw the ball. I mean, that's just what they.
And you got to be able to defend the pass with the court. Right. They're going to be going through quarterback changes, whatever they look like. You got to be able to defend the pass during that time.
Yeah. All right, so we circle back to where we started, John. Running back for the Buccaneers, Alabama running back Najee Harris. If you were late to the podcast, well, the good news is you can rewatch it on YouTube. But here's the quick synopsis. We had Javonte Williams, North Carolina running back at number 32 for the Buccaneers in the Pewter Report 7-round Bucs mock draft, only because I'm not so sure that Najee Harris or Travis Etienne, the running back from Clemson, will be there. But by God, if Najee Harris is there, I think it's a hell of a pick because of what this guy's skill set is, John. And then you want your first-round pick to see the field. And this Bruce Arians offense puts a premium on pass catching between the tackles, running backs, and also splitting the carries between 2 backs. I think in your final season, including the postseason snap counts, John, it was just about 50-50 between Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, again, I just don't know. I think it's clear that they were not crazy about Leonard, but he proved himself more down the stretch. And it's clear, very clear, that they're not crazy about Ronald Jones because of the lack of contributions in the passing game. You listen to anything Arians and Light have said, we think you can teach them pass protection because they all need to be taught it, but you have to be able to catch the ball. What did you look like in that capacity? They tried it with Antonio Gibson. They had targets with CEH. They liked Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They thought Keyshawn Vaughn could be that guy. They thought Leonard Fournette with his 74 catches would come over and be that guy. And I just don't think any of them have wowed. I mean, clearly the way they went back and forth all season, they just aren't settled on anybody. And man, Najee Harris, 70 catches over the last 2 seasons, 729 yards over the last 2 seasons, 11 receiving touchdowns to go, by the way, with his 39 rushing touchdowns over the past 2 years. He's just been crazy productive. And we aren't talking about screens either. 43 catches this past season. He's averaging almost 10 yards a catch, 11 yards a catch the year before. Breaks tackles, plays in the best conference in football, high character guy that they will love off the field. Great with the media, funny. Players love him in the locker room.
He's a winner. He's
a winner. He's super tough. He's going to be a fan favorite for sure.
He's used to splitting carries at Alabama because it's the same kind of thing there. Same with North Carolina with Javonte Williams and Michael Carter. And that's an important thing to come in and know your role and then do it to the best of your ability.
Yeah.
You know what else is, speaking of best of the ability. Okay, I'm going to tell you something right now. I can't say enough good things about Manscaped. I'm not reading the script yet. I'm just talking to you on its face to face here.
It's a good product.
I did not think that I would want or need this lawnmower 3.0. All right. I did not see myself being a Manscaped customer. And I'm going to be honest with you. They sent me this for free. I didn't buy it. But you know what? I would buy it. I would absolutely buy this. And matter of fact, I bought some gifts. And I think that's been a hit so far from the feedback that I've heard, because every guy should have this. And right now we're in the thick of winter. We've seen the polar vortex hit the Midwest. Gosh, you talk about 1 to 3 inches of snow in some areas. Well, sometimes there's 1 to 3 inches of hibernation bush taking place between your pants. Luckily, our partners at Manscaped specialize in products to make sure you're walking around town with 2 beautiful snowballs. Now, Manscaped is here to provide the best tools for your grooming experience. They're offering precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Now, as I've said, the Lawnmower 3.0 trimmer is the best hygiene tool for the modern man. Because of the ceramic blade, the advanced skin-safe technology, your snags on your snowballs are going to be reduced. The trimmer is also waterproof, so you can do the work in the shower if you want, or the jacuzzi if you're a savage. Now, the Manscaped Performance Package is the best buy of 2021. The Performance Package comes with the new and improved Lawnmower 3.0, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, which I'm a big fan of myself. And I know Mark Cook is. He's got the ear hair. I'm not there yet. I just have the nose hair. In fact, 79% of the partners polled admitted that long nose hair is a major turnoff. All right. I know Mrs. Reynolds, sometimes she's like, hey, they gave you a free weed whacker. Like, go to work on your nose up there and get rid of that. So that's legit. In addition to all those goodies, you get the Performance Boxer Briefs, which, John, they're the most comfortable pair of boxers I've ever had.
They're great.
And you get this travel bag, which they call the Woodshed, which is really cool. So you might as well get the best tools to do the job. Now, this bundle also comes with the Crop Preserver, which is the ball deodorant, and the Crop Reviver. And I'm also going to give a shout out too for this right here, which is the Refined Cologne. It's a very great, wonderful scent. So
good stuff.
I didn't think Manscaped had all these products. I thought it was just the Lawnmower 3.0, but no, it's the full kit and caboodle. Now, the best part about this is you don't need cold feet this winter. You can get this stuff and you can save 20% off and get free shipping by using the promo code Pewter at manscaped.com. That's Pewter when you go to manscaped.com, 20% off and free shipping. They've got tons of amazing men's hygiene products available on their website, as well as disposable mats for your pubes to foot deodorant. So they've got everything to keep you fresh and clean in the dead of winter in 2021. So do your shopping at Manscaped. And you know what? We still have a couple more of these left. We've been getting a great response. So if you want a PewterReport.com t-shirt, go ahead and we'll send you one. Just email me at srpewterreport.com your receipt from Manscaped. The good news, there's no information about your finances or your credit card information on there. There's not on there. I just need your name and your address, really. That's why we want you to send that proof of purchase.
Right.
And then just send what color you want, black, gray, or white, and the size, and we'll ship a PewterReport.com t-shirt off to you to kick off the 2021 off season.
Yep. Great stuff. We got lots more to talk about in this offseason in the coming podcast. Tomorrow on the show, Stephen Shea is rumored to be joining the show. Yeah, he's joining the show tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern. We'll be live. We're going to talk about his recent comments about how the Bucs deserve respect with the top franchises in the league. This guy is going after people who have doubted the Bucs. He thinks 2 Super Bowls put him in that conversation. So we're going to talk to him about that and get his thoughts on that, as well as the Bucs season, obviously winning the Super Bowl, being a Bucs fan through the lean years and all of that. We're going to talk with him. It's going to be a lot of fun tomorrow on the show. So until then, thanks so much for listening to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.